Picture a bank. Now take away the marble, the columns, the polished brass rails, and the men in good coats who look through you when you ask a question. Shrink it to a room 14 feet wide. Fill the vault with wedding rings and Sunday trousers, with flat irons and christening gowns, with a carpenter's saw and a sailor's quadrant and 140 pairs of boots, each pair wrapped in paper and numbered and waiting for feet that may never come back. Add a smell of camphor and old bedding that never quite leaves your clothes. Add a hidden side door for the customers who would rather die than be seen walking in. Add a ledger that records, in neat copper plate, the exact weekly hunger of an entire street. That's a pawnbroker's shop in Lambeth, the poor man's bank, the only bank in England that will lend a washerwoman 4 shillings at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning and ask no questions except her name. A place where a lady's bracelet from a house in Belgravia could sit on the same shelf as a dock labourer's boots, wrapped in the same brown paper, entered in the same book, equal at last. A place where you could take in a dead man's overcoat in the morning and lend against a live man's false teeth by noon. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists standing on the pavement, looking up at the 3 brass balls and wondering what they mean. We're going inside, behind the counter. 1 year, 1 person. Everything they would have seen, smelled, counted, weighed, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I've given up trying to work out whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who want to know what a set of second-hand false teeth fetched in Lambeth on a wet Monday in 1870. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The shutter is heavier than it looks. That's the first thing anyone learns at cranes. Each one is a slab of iron-bound deal taller than you are, and they come out of their grooves with a shriek of metal that echoes down the whole of Lower Marsh, and you have to catch the weight against your shoulder and pivot it round and carry it inside without clipping the door frame, because Mr. Crane fined the last boy 2p for splintering the paint, and 2p is 2p. You've done 4 of them already this morning, 2 to go. Your palms are printed with rust. The sky over the rooftops is the colour of dishwater, and the gas lamp over the door is still burning because the fog hasn't decided whether to lift, and your breath and the fog are the same thing in front of your face. And somebody is already knocking at the side door, not the front door. The front door isn't open yet, and anyway the front door is for the bold. The knocking is coming from around the corner in Granby Place. A soft, padded, patient sound, because the knocker on the side door is wrapped in a strip of flannel. Mr. Crane wrapped it himself years ago. A pawnshop side door must not bang. A bang is a broadcast. A soft knock is a secret, and secrets are half of what this shop sells. Knock, knock, pause, knock. Whoever it is has been standing in the fog for a while, and will go on standing because it's Monday, and on a Monday morning in Lambeth there are people outside a pawnbroker's door before the pawnbroker has finished his tea. You know all this now. 6 months ago you knew none of it. Your name is Thomas Gale. You're 16 years old. You came up from Kent in the spring, from a village outside Faversham, where your father was a wheelwright until his chest gave out, and your mother sold his tools and his bench and wrote to a cousin of a cousin in London, and the cousin of a cousin knew a shopkeeper on Lower Marsh who wanted a boy who could write a fair hand and wouldn't steal. You arrived at London Bridge Station with a canvas bag, 3 shillings, a Bible, and one thing of your father's that your mother sewed into the lining of your coat with her own hands the night before you left. You can feel it now if you press your arm against your side. A silver watch chain. No watch. The watch was sold to pay the doctor who didn't save him. The chain your mother kept and hid and gave to you and said, "A man with a chain will get a watch some day, Thomas. A man with neither has nothing to hang his hopes on. You have never told anyone in London that it's there. Of all the places in this city, a pawnbroker's shop is the very worst place to have a secret piece of silver sewn into your coat. You work 10 hours a day among men who can price silver through brown paper, but it's there, stitched under your left arm, and some mornings, like this one, with the iron cold coming through your boots and the fog tasting of coal, you press your elbow against it just to be sure. Get the last shutters in, Thomas. You get the last shutters in. You stack them in the passage in their proper order, 1 to 6, because Mr. Crane will notice if 5 stands where 4 should. You go back for the gate bar, and you stop the way you still stop most mornings, and look up. Above your head, hanging from a wrought iron bracket, 3 brass balls the size of turnips catch what light the morning has. The fog beads on them. Somebody polished them not long ago, and that somebody was you on a ladder last Thursday with rotten stone and a rag, while the market boys shouted encouragement of a kind that doesn't bear repeating. The 3 balls mean nothing and everything. Old men in the trade will tell you they come down from the bankers of Lombardy, the Italian money lenders who set up in London 500 years ago and gave their name to Lombard Street, where the real banks stand now, rich and respectable, pretending they never had a poor relation, the sign of the Medici, some say. The 3 purses of St. Nicholas, say others, tossed through a poor man's window to save his daughters. Nobody knows for certain. It doesn't matter. In every city in England, a man with nothing in his pocket looks up, sees 3 brass balls and understands. It's the plainest signboard in the world. It says, "Whatever has happened to you, come in. We've seen worse. Welcome to Lower Marsh, Lambeth, on the Surrey side of the Thames. Late September 1869. Breathe it in, because you'll be breathing it all day. The fog first, wet and yellow-grey, tasting of every chimney in South London. Under that, the market. Lower Marsh and the New Cut run through this parish like a gullet, and 6 mornings a week they're lined with barrows, herrings and whelks, cabbages and second-hand crockery, and the fish smell gets into the fog and stays there. Under that, the shop itself breathing out at you through the open door, camphor against the moth, benzine and turpentine from the cleaning bench, the flat dusty smell of stored cloth, 100 coats and gowns and blankets packed in paper on the floors above, each one carrying a ghost of the body that wore it and the room it slept in. And under everything, the river. You can't see the Thames from here, but you can smell it at low water, and you can hear the other river too, the iron one. The South Western Railway runs into Waterloo Station on brick arches 2 streets away, and every few minutes a train crosses above the chimney tops with a long rolling thunder, and the windows shiver in their frames, and nobody in Lambeth looks up because that sound is as constant here as a heartbeat. The church bells of St. John's, Waterloo Road, are striking 8. The knocking at the side door comes again, soft, patient, flannel on iron. Thomas. Mr. Crane's voice from inside the shop, dry as sand. He never raises it. He has never once needed to. The door. Josiah Crane is 54 years old, and he has kept this shop for 26 of them. He's a narrow man, narrow shoulders, narrow face, with grey whiskers cut close and a black coat gone greenish at the seams. A coat you've realised that is older than you are, worn by a man who could buy a new one any morning he liked. His eyes are the colour of pewter and they miss nothing, and his hands are the surprise of him. Fine, quick, clean hands, the hands of a surgeon that can take a gold ring from a woman's palm, weigh it, gauge it, read the hallmark, and know its worth to the sixpence, all in the time it takes her to say her name. He has been doing this since before you were born. He is doing it, in his head, every waking hour, to everything and everyone he sees. You have watched him glance at a stranger in the street and murmur the man's coat, boots, and watch to the shilling, the way another man might hum a tune. "You're late," he says as you come through the shop. You're not late. The clock behind him, a big office regulator that came in as a pledge in 1861 and was never redeemed, says 3 minutes to 8. He says this every morning to whichever boy is nearest. You've learned what Walter told you in your first week. Don't argue, don't apologise, just move. Guilt is free, lateness costs. You go down the dark passage past the stacked shutters and you slide the bolt on the side door. The fog comes in first, then Mrs. Toomey. She's a broad, quick-eyed woman of about 40, a laundress's forearms on her, a black shawl crossed over her chest and pinned, and a bundle under her arm the size of a small child, wrapped in a square of oilcloth that she has used for this purpose every Monday morning for, Walter says, 11 years. She doesn't wait to be asked. She steps past you into the passage, out of sight of the street, with the ease as a woman entering her own kitchen. "Morning, Thomas." She says it Thomas, London fashion. She looks you over once, head to boots. You've not grown again. They can't be feeding you. "Morning, Mrs. Toomey." "Michael's suit," she says, which is not information because it is always Michael's suit, and she holds out the bundle and the week begins. And here is where you have to understand what this shop actually is, because it isn't what you thought it was 6 months ago, when you first stood under those 3 brass balls with your canvas bag and your sewn-up chain and your heart going like a hammer. You thought it was a place where desperate people came once, at the end of everything, to sell their last possessions and be cheated. It isn't. It's a machine. A great slow weekly machine, and half of Lambeth is inside it. Watch what happens to Michael Toomey's suit and you'll understand the machine. Michael Toomey is a riverside labourer. When there's work at the wharves, he earns 3 shillings and 6pence a day, and when there isn't, he earns nothing, and no man alive can tell him on a Monday which kind of week this will be. But rent is a fixed thing. Rent on their 2 rooms in Fraser Street is 4 shillings a week, due Monday, and the landlord's man does not accept explanations about the shipping. So every Sunday Michael Toomey wears his good suit, a black broadcloth suit, bought for his wedding 14 years ago, kept beautifully, brushed and folded by his wife, to chapel where the family looks respectable, which matters more than you yet know. And every Monday morning before 8 that suit comes here, wrapped in oilcloth, under his wife's arm. Mr. Crane lends 4 shillings on it. The 4 shillings pays the rent. On Saturday night, when Michael is paid, Mrs. Toomey comes back. Saturday nights this shop is open until 11, sometimes past it, and she redeems the suit for 4 shillings and a penny halfpenny, and carries it home and brushes it and hangs it up. And on Sunday, Michael Toomey wears it to chapel like a man who has never been within a mile of a pawnshop in his life. Every week, every single week, for 11 years. The suit is not really a suit anymore. It's a wheel. It goes round. Chapel, counter, warehouse, counter, chapel. Mr. Crane doesn't even open the bundle most Mondays. He knows what's in it the way you know your own boots. The oilcloth square has worn pale at the folds. And when I say half of Lambeth is inside this machine, I need you to understand what that means. This isn't a few unlucky families. On a Monday morning, this shop will take in 150 pledges before dinner time, and there are 4 other pawnbrokers within a half-mile, all doing the same trade at the same hour. The flat irons come in on Monday and go out on Saturday, because you can't iron on the Sabbath anyway. The best boots come in Monday, out Saturday. Wedding rings. In and out, in and out. So regular that some women wear a brass ring for the working week and nobody in the street thinks twice. Everything comes in, everything goes out. The wheel turns. Mr. Crane has a saying about it, one of his few. He delivered it in your first week without looking up from the scales. We are not the last resort, boy. We are the first resort. The bank comes to those who need it least. We come to everyone else. Now watch the transaction itself, because the transaction is a ritual, and every movement in it is fixed by law, custom, or Mr. Crane, and you had to learn all 3. Mrs. Toomey lays the bundle on the counter. You take it, you're allowed this part now, and you say the words, 4 shillings, and she says, as she says every week, 4 and 6 1 week on my life, and you say, 4 shillings, and she sighs a sigh 11 years old and takes it, because this is not a negotiation, it's a liturgy. Both of you would be a little frightened if the other one changed the words, then the ticket. Everything in this trade is the ticket. You take a duplicate from the book, 2 parts, twin printed forms, one for the shop and one for her. On it you write, in the fair hand that got you this position, the date, the article, man's suit, black, the sum lent, 4 shillings, her name and her address, Toomey, 12 Fraser Street. The book does the rest. Printed on every ticket, in type small enough to need young eyes, are the words of the Act of Parliament that rules every licensed pawnbroker in the kingdom. An act passed in the year 1800, when George III was on the throne, and never much mended since, though there are men in Parliament this very year who say it must be. Under that act, the charges in this shop are not Mr. Crane's to choose. The law fixes them. A halfpenny a month interest for every half-crown lent. A halfpenny for the ticket itself on small pledges. A pledge may be redeemed at any time within a year, and if a full year passes and the thing is worth 10 shillings or less, it becomes the broker's own property to sell across the counter. And if it's worth more than 10 shillings, it may not simply be kept. It must go to public auction, sold openly, and if it fetches more than the loan and the charges, the surplus belongs to the customer, who may come and claim it any time within 3 years. Read that last part again, because nobody believes it the first time. If Mr. Crane auctions your unredeemed watch and it makes more than you owed him, the difference is yours by law. The strangest rule in a trade full of strange rules. The pawnbroker as unwilling trustee of the poor man's windfall. Mr. Crane keeps a drawer of such surpluses, entered in a book, waiting, some are claimed, most never are, and after 3 years they quietly stop waiting. But here is the arithmetic they don't print on the ticket, and you worked it out yourself in your first month on the back of a spoiled duplicate, and it kept you awake. The law counts any part of a month as a whole month. Mrs. Toomey borrows 4 shillings on Monday and repays on Saturday, 5 days. But 5 days is part of a month, so she pays a full month's interest. A penny on 4 shillings, plus the halfpenny ticket. A penny halfpenny a week, every week, 52 weeks in the year. 6 shillings and 6pence a year. To borrow the same 4 shillings, over and over, against her own husband's suit. She has paid for that suit perhaps 3 times over by now, and she's never owed more than 4 shillings, and she has never once been late. Is it robbery? You asked Walter that in your second week, whispering, up in the attic. Walter laughed at you, but quietly, because Walter does everything quietly. Robbery, Walter said. Right. Go and find a 4 shillings somewhere else on a Monday morning then. The bank? They'd not let her pass the step. Moneylender'd want 6pence back on the 4 by Saturday, and her furniture signed over besides. Her sister's got nothing. The parish would take her children first and lecture her after. There's nobody else, Tom. Nobody else in the whole of England will put 4 shillings in that woman's hand in 30 seconds flat. No questions, no begging, no sermon. Only us. A penny halfpenny a week is what not begging costs. She'd tell you herself it's cheap. Walter Peck is 19, the senior assistant, 3 years out of his own apprenticeship at a shop in Bermondsey. He's thin and sandy and looks half asleep, and he can write a ticket, test a sovereign, and watch 2 customers' hands all at the same time, and he shares the attic with you, and he doesn't snore much, and everything worth knowing that Mr. Crane didn't teach you, Walter did. It was Walter who showed you the shop that first morning, the way a sailor shows you a ship. The front shop, 14 feet wide, 18 deep, gas burning even at noon in winter. The long mahogany counter, scarred pale where a generation of rings and irons have slid across it. Behind the counter, the racks of small pledges in their paper wrappings, each with its duplicate pinned on. The scales, 2 sets, the great iron beam for bundles, and the little brass balance for gold and silver, which lives under a glass shade like something holy, next to the touchstone and the bottle of aquafortis that bites false gold green and lets true gold alone. The ring gauges on their wire, the magnifying glass on its chain, the drawer of tickets, the iron safe, and screwed to the underside of the counter on Mr. Crane's side, where a customer would never see it, but a hand can find it in half a second, a foot of whalebone with a knob of lead at the end, a life-preserver, the polite London name for a thing whose purpose is not polite at all. It has hung there, Walter says, for 20 years. Never seen it come off its hooks, Walter said, and touch the counter over it, the way you'd touch wood. Then the pledge boxes. Along one side of the shop, a row of narrow stalls like church pews stood on end, each with its own little door from the side passage, so that a customer can stand in a wooden slot the width of a coffin and do their business at the counter, unseen by the shop, the street, and above all by each other. The boxes are for the ashamed, which is to say, at one time or another, for everybody. You have taken pledges through those boxes from a curate's wife, from a schoolmaster, from a young surgeon whose instruments came in wrapped in a towel 3 Februaries running, Walter says, when the fevers ebb and nobody in Lambeth can afford to be cured. The poor pawn at the open counter and chaff each other in the queue, the respectable pawn in a wooden box in a whisper through a door in a side street. Same counter, same book, same charges. The only thing money buys in this shop is privacy about not having it. And then the spout. At the back of the shop is a hatch in the ceiling, and through it runs a broad wooden chute with a rope-hauled tray, connecting the counter to the warehouse floors above. When a pledge is taken in, it's wrapped, numbered, and sent up the spout. When a ticket is presented, the number is called up the spout and down the pledge comes. Up the spout. You knew the phrase before you knew the trade. Half of England says it of anything lost, broke or ruined, gone up the spout, and here is the actual spout it goes up. Some evenings when the shop is quiet you can stand at the counter and hear the whole building above you creak with the weight of other people's property. 3 floors, coats and gowns on the first, in racks in paper, camphored against moth, turned and aired, because the law and Mr. Crane both hold the broker answerable for every pledge, as if it were his own. Bedding and bundles on the second. On the top floor, in locked presses, the watches, the rings, the plate, the instruments, and one shelf in the corner that you were shown once and told about never. On that shelf sits a single parcel, sewn in canvas, the stitching brown with age, a ticket pinned to it so faded the ink is only a stain. It's entered in no book you've ever been allowed to touch. When you asked Walter what it was, Walter, who will tell you anything, who told you what the surgeon pawned and what the curate's wife said, looked at it for a moment and then went back down the ladder. "That one's Mr. Crane's own," he said. "Dust round it, not over it, and don't ask him." You dust round it, not over it. You haven't asked him. By 9:30 the fog has thinned to a dirty gauze, the market outside is at full roar, and the shop has taken in 41 pledges. Your fingers are grey with newspaper and string. You've wrapped irons, boots, a concertina, a plane, and 2 chisels, a china dog, and a wedding ring from a girl who watched it go into the little box as if it were being buried. The wheel is turning, and you are inside it now, one small tooth on one small cog, learning the strangest trade in London 1 halfpenny at a time. "Thomas," says Mr. Crane, not looking up, "take the board off number 3 box. Lady's been stood in there 5 minutes composing herself. They redeem faster if they can see the clock. The strange rules. There are hundreds of them. You're going to learn them all. Some of them you learn behind the counter. Some of them you learn in the street. In the middle of October, on a Thursday, Mr. Crane calls you into the back room, where the stock books live and the gas burns green, and hands you a deal box the size of a bread bin, corded and sealed with red wax at every knot. He presses the cord into the wax himself with his thumb ring while you hold the knots tight. You know what's in this. Forfeits, sir, above 10 shillings. Watches and plate above 10 shillings, he says. 14 lots. Pledged a year gone, not redeemed, and so by law they cannot stay here. They go to auction, and the auction is not mine, and that is the whole beauty of it. He ties his own knot over yours. Debenham Store, King Street, Covent Garden. You'll take it over the bridge. You'll get Mr. Ledbury's receipt with the count written on it in words, not figures, and you'll be back by 1. Here's a shilling for the errand. The tolls come out of it. Your dinner comes out of it. And I'll have the change counted back, so know what you spend. Then he looks at you over the top of the box, pewter-eyed. 14 months you've been alive in this trade, Thomas. 14 minutes is what it would take the cut to have that box off a careless boy. Both hands, no stopping, no obliging strangers. 14 months is wrong. It's been 7. But you don't correct him, because he isn't really talking about you. He's talking about a boy from years ago, some other apprentice who stopped or obliged a stranger. There's a story there. You'll never hear it. Both hands, no stopping, out into the cut. And when I say the new cut on a market day, I need you to understand what that means, because there is nothing left in England quite like it now. This is a street perhaps 40 feet wide with 300 barrows in it, and every barrow has a voice, and every voice is for hire at the top of its range. Whelks, penny a saucer, cough drops, live eels in a tin bath moving like grey rope, a man selling second-hand spectacles from a tray, and customers trying pair after pair against a printed bill he holds up, until the street swims into focus and they pay him 4pence. A quack with a coloured bottle who can cure worms, weakness and bad husbands. boots strung on a pole like game birds. A ballad seller bawling the last dying speech of a murderer who hasn't actually died yet. The hanging's not till Monday, and nobody minding, because a penny's a penny, and the words are the same every time. Underfoot, cabbage leaves, fish scales, straw, one lost patterned shoe, small children moving through the forest of legs with flat professional eyes. Overhead, the trains, rolling their iron thunder into Waterloo every 2 or 3 minutes, so that the whole street pauses mid-word and resumes without noticing it paused. You carry the box the way Walter taught you, hugged high on the chest, boring with your shoulder, never meeting the eye of anyone who calls to you, because everyone who calls to you in the cut wants something, and a sealed box under a shop boy's arm is the most interesting thing that will pass this morning. Twice hands touch the box, light, testing, almost friendly. Both times you turn your body and keep walking, heart banging, face wooden, exactly as instructed, and the hands melt away. No harm done, no offence taken. That's the cut's own strange rule. Everything's a try. Nobody's angry when a try fails. There will be another boy along in a minute. At the bottom of Waterloo Road, the street opens out, and there is the bridge, and there is the river, and there, because it is his post and has been for years, is Foley. Old Foley sits on a stool at the head of the bridge steps, beside a basket of second-hand books nobody buys, with a face like a walnut and a blue Guernsey gone white at the elbows. He was a waterman 40 years, sculling passengers across this reach when the fare was a penny, and the bridge was new and hated for stealing his trade. Waterloo Bridge, opened in 1817, 9 granite arches, and a halfpenny toll on every foot passenger to this day, which is why Lambeth calls it the Halfpenny Bridge, and why the poor still walk round by Westminster to save the coin. Foley took the waterman's defeat personally for a decade, he says, and then took a stool and started living off the enemy, minding parcels and selling books at its steps. Crane's boy, he says, not a question. He knows every regular pair of feet on these steps. Box of sorrows for the garden? Watches, you say, before you remember you shouldn't. Watches. Foley nods slowly, looking out at the water, brown and busy, barges going down on the ebb. 14 dead men's time off to be sold. He doesn't ask how many, he gets it out to your face. That's a thing the old ones can do, watermen and pawnbrokers both, and you make a note one more time to have a face that gives nothing some day when you're old. Ha'porth of advice with your toll boy. Walk the middle of the bridge. Corner men work the parapets. You pay your halfpenny at the turnstile, clack, and you walk the middle of the bridge. And halfway over you stop being careful for 6 seconds, because nobody made of flesh could not. The tide is running hard down, and the whole river is at work. Coal barges black to the waterline, a tug fussing sparks, hay boats from the upriver farm stacked like floating ricks, and away to the east, past Blackfriars, the Dome. St. Paul's rides over the smoke of the city like a grey moon. 365 feet from the pavement to the top of its cross, a foot for every day of the year, the boy's saying goes, near enough true. Finished in 1710, built by Sir Christopher Wren out of the ashes of the Great Fire, and blackened ever since by the coal smoke of the city it watches. From here, with the sun behind the haze, it doesn't look built. It looks grown. Your grandfather's grandfather could have stood on this shore, before any bridge stood here, and seen that same dome, already old. 6 seconds, then both hands, no stopping, and on. The Strand. Covent Garden, where the vegetable market is finishing and the smashed produce lies ankle deep, and the flower girls are bundling violets for the theatre trade. And in King Street, a doorway you'd walk past if you didn't know, Debenham, Store and Sons, auctioneers, where the unredeemed pledges of every pawnbroker in London come at last to be sold. Mr. Ledbury's counting room smells of ink, dust and tea. He's a round, creaking man with a pen behind each ear, and he breaks Mr. Crane's seals, checks 14 lots against 14 lines, and writes you a receipt with the count in words, not figures. Because figures, young man, can be improved with a stroke of the pen, and words cannot. Another rule, filed away. Through a door you can see the sale room itself, a gallery of shelves rising like a church organ, loaded with watches by the gross, rings on rods, teapots, telescopes, flutes, a harp, a sword. Every single object in that room was somebody's pledge. Everyone was carried in under somebody's arm, on some bad Monday, in some year of trouble, to some counter like yours, and ticketed and shelved and waited for and not come back for. A room full of the last chapters of 10,000 stories nobody will ever hear the start of. Does it ever, you ask Mr. Ledbury before you can stop yourself, make you low, selling it all? He caps his inkwell, considering you, not unkindly. It made me low for about a year, in 1841, he says. Then I noticed that the money goes back. Loan, charges, and the surplus to the pledger if they ask. We're not wreckers, boy. We're the tide. Things come in, things go out. He hands you the receipt. Mind, some of it I don't sell. Tell Crane the medal in lot 9 wants looking at again. He'll know what I mean by that. You don't know what he means by that. You will. You're back over the bridge, halfpenny, clack, middle of the roadway, and through the cut and behind the counter by 10 minutes to 1, with the receipt and 9pence change, and the taste of a 2penny meat pie eaten standing up in King Street, which was mostly gravy and mystery and wonderful. Mr. Crane reads the receipt twice, reads the part about lot 9, and his face does something small that you've never seen it do. He puts the receipt in the safe without a word. That same afternoon, as if the day had planned it, the medal's brother walks in. He comes to the open counter, not the boxes, too old to be ashamed or past the use of it. An upright man near 60 with a white stubble and a black coat brushed threadbare. And he lays down a small parcel folded in a clean handkerchief, and inside is a silver medal on a faded blue and yellow ribbon, with 2 clasps on the ribbon bar. Alma, Inkerman, the Crimea, 1854. This man stood in the ranks on the heights above the Alma River 15 years ago, and again in the fog at Inkerman that November, where the fighting was hand to hand in the brush and the gun smoke, and he has carried the proof on a ribbon ever since, and now it's October, and the nights are turning, and he is on your counter asking what it will fetch. Walter, beside you, goes very still, and you learn the rule from his stillness before anyone speaks it. There is a manner for this, no chaff, no hurry. You do not ask a man his regiment unless he offers it. 1/2 crown, says Mr. Crane quietly, coming down the counter himself, moving Walter aside with 2 fingers. 1/2 crown is over the odds, and every man present knows it. Silver and sentiment together wouldn't fetch 2 shillings at Ledbury's. The soldier knows it too. Something happens in his jaw. I'll be back for it, he says, when the cold work starts again. Gas works take stokers on come November. I'll be back for it, mind. That, says Mr. Crane, writing the ticket, is entirely your affair, sir. It will be here. The old man goes out with the 1/2 crown and his empty handkerchief folded in 8, and his back very straight, and Mr. Crane sends the medal up the spout himself, wrapped in tissue first and paper after, and enters it in the book in his own hand. "Rule for you, Thomas," he says, capping the ink. "Some pledges we are lending on the goods. Some we are lending on the man. The law doesn't know the difference." He looks at the hatch a moment. "We do. There's one more class of customer, and you meet its finest specimen on the last Friday of October at 4:15, with the gas already lit against the dusk. He comes to the middle box, always the middle box. A soft-footed, comfortable-looking man of 50 in a good hat, with the mild face of a churchwarden, and he lays out on the counter, on a nice clean cloth of their own, 6 silver tablespoons. "Deaf Charlie," breathes Walter from the far end of the counter without moving his lips. Charlie is called Deaf Charlie because whenever a question doesn't suit him, he can't hear it. "It is," Walter says, "the most profitable deafness in South London. The spoons are good, heavy, old, crested, except that where the crest should be, on each spoon, there is a bright shallow scoop of new metal, where a monogram has been filed away and the place polished. Filed recently. Filed, in fact, badly. Understand the position, because the law puts the pawnbroker in a place as strange as any of his rules. Every week the police send round their printed informations, lists of property stolen in the district and beyond, 1 hunter watch, engine turned, number so-and-so. A mourning brooch with hair under glass, 6 silver spoons, crested." Mr. Crane keeps the sheets on a spike by the ticket drawer, and he reads them the way other men read the racing news. A broker who takes in stolen goods loses the goods when they're claimed, loses his money with them, and, if the magistrate thinks he took them carelessly, or worse, knowingly, can lose the licence, which is the whole shop, which is everything. A broker who stops goods and detains the customer is protected by the Act and thanked by the bench. Between those two fates stands nothing but judgment, exercised in about 4 seconds, 40 times a day. Every pawnbroker in London is, whether he likes it or not, an unpaid detective with a counter for a beat. Mr. Crane picks up 1 spoon. He does not look at Deaf Charlie. He looks at the scooped place where somebody's initials used to be, and he turns the spoon over, and he reads the hallmarks, and he sets it down again, all with the gentle regret of a doctor closing his bag. "Not today," he says. "Eh?" says Deaf Charlie, leaning in, hand to his ear, mild as milk. "Not today," says Mr. Crane at exactly the same volume. And that's all. No accusation. An accusation could be actionable, and Charlie, who has never been convicted of anything, has a lawyer's sense of a slander. No sermon. Just the spoons pushed softly back across the counter on their nice clean cloth. Charlie gathers them up without hurry, wishes the shop a very good evening in the voice of a man who's heard perfectly all his life, and pads out. Through the window you watch him pause in the lit doorway of the market, considering like a man choosing between chop houses, and then move off north towards a certain unlicensed shop by the gasworks that lends money on goods, without tickets, without questions, and without ever troubling the police with reading matter. He'll place them inside the hour, you say. He will, says Mr. Crane, spiking a new information sheet. And when they're found there, that man will lose his licence if he ever held one, and his money, and possibly his liberty. And we will still be here. He glances at you. We are not the police, Thomas. We are a wall. A wall doesn't chase anybody. It stands where it stands, and the flood goes round it, and the wall's one duty is to still be standing tomorrow. Mind you're a wall. You mind, though you'll meet Deaf Charlie again twice, and the first time he'll make it personal. Now come and see the other end of the week. Saturday night, the night the wheel turns back. By 8 o'clock on a Saturday, Lower Marsh is a canal of fire. The barrows light their naphtha flares at dusk, and 300 white flames roar gently over the stalls, and the whole street goes the colour of brass. Half of Lambeth is out, wages in hand. The men paid at 1 o'clock, some of them already 3 pints into the money. The wives moving stall to stall with baskets, buying the Sunday dinner. A shoulder of mutton going cheap because there's no ice house on earth will keep it till Monday. Potatoes, a cabbage, a twist of tea. The butcher's ball. The fish stalls give off their long day's smell. Somewhere a barrel organ grinds and children dance in the roadway to it, seriously, in rows, like a country dance seen through broken glass. And into the shop, from 7 until 11, comes the queue. Saturday night is redemption night. Everything that came in on Monday goes home by Sunday. The suit, the boots, the ring, the flat irons. Out, out, out. You and Walter work the counter like a pair of oarsmen, one calling numbers up the spout, one counting coin, and the tray comes rattling down with bundle after bundle, and the counter is a weather of brown paper. 4 shillings and 3 halfpence, ticket, coin, bundle. Next, 1 and 7 halfpence, ticket, coin, bundle. Next, Mrs. Toomey comes at 9, pays her 4 and a penny halfpenny out of a knotted handkerchief, warm from her hand, takes the oilcloth bundle and is gone in 40 seconds. A woman with 6 more stalls to visit before the good mutton's gone. The gas roars. Your fingers turn grey with coin the way they turn grey with paper on Mondays. Money handled at speed is dirty as coal. By 11 you could print your thumb on a ticket like a smudge of soot. This is the part nobody who sneers at the trade ever stands still long enough to see. On Monday morning this shop looks like the misery of Lambeth, all its Sunday best going up the spout. On Saturday night it looks like the answer to a prayer, everything coming down again, on time, kept safe, moth-free, brushed. Mr. Crane will dock you a shilling if a coat goes home creased, into the hands of people who, for a penny, have turned one suit into 52 Sundays of self-respect. Everything comes in. Everything goes out. The wheel turns. You're so tired by 11 that the coins stop being money and become weight, and the last customer is a drunk redeeming a concertina who plays 2 bars of something in the doorway beautifully and is gone into the brass-coloured night. Then the shutters, up this time 1 to 6. The gate bar, the day book, the coin counted twice into the safe, and Mr. Crane's Saturday benediction, the same every week. Right, Sunday, which means it's over, you're free, be back by 10 tomorrow night, and where you go until then is between you and your conscience. Where Walter goes is the Feathers, in the court off Granby Place, and this Saturday, for the first time, he jerks his chin at you to come. The Feathers is one low room, black beams, sand on the floor, a fire, a fiddle, and 80 people in a space built for 30. The beer is 4pence a pot and mostly water, and after 5 hours of counting other people's coin, it tastes like the reward of virtue. Walter knows everyone. Half the customers of the shop are here, and here is the last strange rule of the trade you learn that night. Outside the counter, nobody knows you. The man whose watch you hold nods to you as to any stranger. Mrs. Kearney, whose blankets are up the spout this minute, stands you no greeting and no grudge. The shop is the shop and the street is the street, and the wall between them is agreed by everyone, and it is thicker than the wall of any church. Which is why what happens by the door as you're leaving is a violation of something older than law, A soft, comfortable presence at your shoulder. A good hat. A mild voice, pitched under the fiddle and not deaf at all. Crane's new boy. Kentish, they tell me. Deaf Charlie doesn't look at you. He looks at the room, benevolently, like a churchwarden at a tea. Hard trade for a boy, all that silver through your hands and none of it stopping. Now, a lad with a clean face, a lad no shop in Southwark knows yet, might carry a little parcel in of an evening. Here, there, never the same door twice, and pledge it in his own honest name, and hand me the ticket and keep a shilling for his trouble. A shilling a parcel, Kentish. 2 on a good week. No harm done to any soul alive. The shops lose nothing. The law calls it nothing. It's only tickets. It is not only tickets, and even 7 months in the trade is enough to know exactly what it is. It's Charlie's stolen goods walking into honest shops under your clean face, and your honest name in the pledge book next to every one of them, so that when the informations catch up, and they always catch up, the name the police find in shop after shop after shop is Thomas Gale. He isn't offering you a shilling a parcel. He's offering to buy your name, which is the only thing you own outright for a shilling a parcel, and rent it to the gallows. Your heart is going hard. The room is hot. The fiddle soars. No, you say. And then you can't help it. Your mother raised you. Thank you. Charlie hears the refusal perfectly well. He hears the thank you too, and it seems to please him, the way a soft spot in fruit pleases a wasp. 16, he says to the room mildly. They're all iron at 16. Come and find me at 18 when you've a girl or a debt. And he pads out into the fog. Walter walks you home the long way round, not talking. The market is over. The naphtha flares are out. The cut at midnight is a black glitter of trodden fish scales, and one policeman's lantern working the shop doors, testing each lock with a push of the hand. Testing cranes too, brass balls hanging still and dark. Somewhere behind you, footsteps keep a steady 30 yards for 2 streets, then turn off. Perhaps nothing. In Lambeth, at midnight, you never learn which ones were nothing. Up the ladder, in the attic, in the dark, you press your elbow once against the left side of your coat and feel the small, hard links of the chain through the lining. Still there. Still yours. Still nobody's business. Walter, you say into the dark. Does he ever get anybody? Charlie? The straw rustles. A long pause and you think he's asleep. He got the boy before you, Walter says. And then he does sleep, or pretends to, and the trains go over the arches all night. Long iron thunder, fading, returning, fading, like weather that never quite arrives. You get the rest of it out of Walter on the Sunday, over bread and dripping, in the cold parlour behind the shop. The boy before you was called Dick. You won't hear the surname. Walter won't give it because the family's still in the parish. He was quick, likeable, and 18, and he had a girl, and the girl liked things, and deaf Charlie found him exactly as Charlie found you, at a door, in the warm, with a mild voice and a shilling. It went on for 5 months. Parcels here, parcels there, never the same shop twice, until the information's closed over him like water over a stone, and the police walked the pledge books of Southwark and found one name written out 19 times in that clean shop hand. Dick swore he never knew the goods were wrong, and the magistrate looking at 19 entries was not able to believe him, and it was 6 months in the House of Correction, and no shop in London will ever set that name in a pledge book again. The girl, Walter says, married a plasterer. Charlie, of course, was never touched. Charlie signed nothing. Charlie was merely a man who sometimes bought pawn tickets from a lad he knew, which is legal, and sold them on to persons unknown, which is a market older than the law that watches it. And Mr. Crane, you ask? Paid for the lawyer, Walter says. Never said one word to Dick, before or after. Sat in the court the whole day, at the back, in his good hat. Come home. Took the boy's name out of the wages book. Ruled it through once neat like a spoiled ticket. Walter carves dripping onto bread, not looking at you. That's Crane. He won't warm you, but he won't waste you either. Don't you go being wasted, Tom. That could be you, is what he isn't saying. 1 shilling, 1 parcel, 1 clean face. That could be you exactly. November shuts down over Lambeth like a lid on a pot. The fog comes now not as weather but as a tenant, settled in, paying no rent. Some mornings you can't see the 3 brass balls from across the street, and the market lights its naphtha flares at 2 in the afternoon, and the trains crawl over the arches, feeling their way, whistling low, mournful as cattle. The shop trade turns over with the season, and you learn to read the year by what crosses the counter. The overcoats go home, men who pawned their winter coats in April when the warm came, redeem them now 1 by 1, 7 months' interest paid, 3 halfpence on the half-crown, and the coats smell of camphor and lost time as you unwrap them. The blankets go home, the flat irons keep their Monday-Saturday wheel, and other things start coming in, the summer's boots, worn thin, tools as outdoor work slackens, a bricklayer's line and trowels 1 week, a whole basket of carpenter's planes the next, each one an idle pair of hands somewhere, each ticket a man sitting at home watching the fog eat his trade. The pledge book, Mr. Crane says, is the truest almanac in England. Cold weather is written in it a fortnight before it arrives. In the fine hand of people who can feel the future in their bones, because the future has caught them out before. Your own hands crack at the knuckles from paper and string and cold water. Mrs. Crane gives you tallow to rub in at night. It works, and you smell like a candle, and Walter says devotional things at you in the dark until you throw a boot. Mrs. Crane. It's this month you properly come to see her, because November is her season, the way Saturday night is Walter's. Hannah Crane is 50, a spare, upright woman with grey hair scraped back to a knot you could hang your hat on, and a face that gives no more away than her husband's, and she keeps his house, and cooks for 2 apprentice boys as if fattening you were a commission from God. But watch her of a Monday when the shop is full and she carries through the tea. Watch her see a particular kind of face in the queue, a woman new to it, first time at any counter, standing rigid in the middle box with a baby's shawl to pledge and shame coming off her like heat off iron. Mrs. Crane has a 6th sense for a first time, and somehow that woman, going out through the side passage, will find herself asked in for a sit-down on some invented business, a chair by the kitchen fire, a cup of tea she never ordered, and no questions and no scripture and no charity. Nothing a proud woman couldn't accept, nothing she'll owe. 10 minutes of being a person in a kitchen instead of a pledge in a queue, then out through the yard door which doesn't open on the market. Mrs. Crane keeps a book too. You've seen it. A penny memorandum book in the dresser drawer, in a hand much rounder than her husband's. You've never seen inside it. You suspect it is the exact opposite of a pledge book, and that nothing entered there is ever expected back. December, and the shop fills up with Christmas. Christmas in the trade is a tide like no other. All through the autumn, half the street has been paying into goose clubs. A penny, 2p a week at the Feathers and a dozen pubs like it, all year, against a Christmas bird. and now the clubs pay out, and the geese come home down the cut in baskets, in barrows under arms, a street full of dead geese riding like lords, and at Crane's, the week before Christmas turns into one long Saturday night. Everything comes home for Christmas. Things pledged in March, things pledged last Christmas, things you'd have sworn were forfeits, dead stock, sleeping their last year away on the third floor. The ticket kept all this time flat in a Bible, in a tea caddy, sewn in a stays lining. Out they come, and down the spout comes the parcel, and 12 months of halfpennies are counted onto the counter in sixpences and joeys and farthings, and the paper comes off things on the counter itself because the owners can't wait. A China tea service, husband to wife, pledged the week after Whitsun. A concertina, the same concertina. The drunk was a father, the son plays better. A doll with a wax face, in by August, out by Christmas. And the man who redeems it, a stoker with hands like clinker, holds it upside down by one leg all the way out of the shop, whistling. And on the day before Christmas Eve in the afternoon the old soldier comes back. He's greyer than October, and the cough on him has a cellar sound, but his back is as straight as ever, and he lays his ticket on the counter flattened from a pocket-book, and counts out 2 shillings and 7 pence halfpenny, the half-crown, and 3 months' interest at a halfpenny the month, and you have the sum ready before he finishes counting, because you've been keeping that ticket's arithmetic in your head without admitting it. Down the spout comes the tissue-wrapped medal. He doesn't pin it on in the shop. He stands at the counter and threads the ribbon through his fingers once, twice, like a man telling a rosary, and then it goes into his breast pocket, and he squares up and thanks the shop. The shop, all of it, the fixture and the firm, with one nod. Dinner at the regiment's rooms, Christmas Day, he says, to nobody in particular. A man wears his medal to his dinner. He does, says Mr. Crane. You'll see the medal again before the winter's out. So will Mr. Crane. Neither of you says so, but the ticket book knows. What goes home for Christmas comes back in January. The wheel doesn't stop for holly. Christmas Day itself, the shop stands shuttered, one of 4 days in the year it ever does, and you eat at the Crane's table upstairs, in the room over the shop where you've never been. A goose, a pudding with a 6pence in it that lands in Walter's slice 2 years running, which no one can explain and no one investigates, and a fire built extravagant and high. Mr. Crane carves like he weighs gold, exact to the member. Mrs. Crane watches you eat with the stern satisfaction of a wheelwright watching a wheel turn true, and afterwards, in the lamplight, with the port going round in glasses that came in as a pledge in 1858 and were never fetched, Mr. Crane tells, not a story exactly, Crane doesn't tell stories, but facts, in order, about the shop. How this counter came out of a bankrupt linen draper's on Blackfriars Road in 1843. How the regulator clock ran 11 years for a shipping office before it ever told Lambeth the time. How there has been a pawnbroker on this exact spot since before the bridge, when the marsh was a real marsh and the trade came over by boat. Below you, under the floorboards, under the lamplight and the goose smell, the dark shop stands full to the roof of other people's Christmases. Everything not redeemed, everything still waiting, the watches ticking themselves down in the locked presses, the sewn canvas parcel keeping its corner shelf. You think of it down there while the fire snaps, a house of pledges, and every pledge a promise, and on top of it all once a year, a lit room and a goose. Boxing Day, the wheel turns again. The tea service comes back in by Thursday. The dole lasts out the month just, and in the second week of January, the cold arrives that people will talk about at counters for years, and with it, on one black 7 o'clock morning, comes the only customer in your whole apprenticeship who reaches across the counter and puts his hands on you. The frost comes down on London like a fist on a table. The standpipes freeze and the water carts sell by the can. The fog turns to a dry, bitter smoke haze through which the sun crosses low and orange, giving light and no heat, like a sovereign held up out of reach. Outdoor work stops dead. No mortar will set, no river work in the ice-fringed barges, no market garden loads coming in. And when outdoor work stops, Lambeth's wages stop, and when Lambeth's wages stop, every stitch and stick the parish owns starts moving toward the 3 brass balls. In the second week of January you take in more pledges in 6 days than in any fortnight of the autumn. Bedding comes in. Bedding in January, Sam, because rent beats warmth. You can share a coat at night, but no one can share you a room. The counter is a procession of frost-nipped fingers fumbling knots, and the shop smells of cold itself, that iron smell that comes indoors on wool. Mr. Crane meets the frost with the only mercy his trade allows him, which is arithmetic. He lends full on everything. Walter notices it first at the great scales. Bundles that would have raised 3 shillings in October raising 3 and 6 for. No speech. No kindness you could catch him at. Just the odd sixpence, again and again, on the side of the fingers that are shaking. The act fixes what he may charge. It says nothing about what he may lend. And in that silence between 2 rules, that January, a certain number of grates in Fraser Street and Granby Place keep a fire in them that had no business burning. The man comes on the Thursday of the second week, at 7 in the morning, in the black before the late dawn. First knock of the day at the side door. You slide the bolt. He's past 30 and looks 50. A big frame gone hollow, no overcoat in the worst cold of the decade, and he sets a watch on the counter of the middle box, a working man's silver watch, honest and worn, and while you bend to the gauge light to read the case, his eyes are not on the watch or on you. They're on the till drawer, which Walter has just opened, 4 feet away, to count in the morning float. You feel it before you understand it. 7 months of Walter's schooling in watching hands, and it all fires at once. Some bell ringing below thought, the wrongness of where he is looking, the way his weight is on the balls of his feet, the breath he takes that is too deep for a man about to state a sum. Then he comes over the counter, not clever, not quick, a starving man's lunge, one knee up on the mahogany, one long arm swinging past you for the drawer, and his other hand grabbing a fistful of your coat at the shoulder to lever himself across. And for half a heartbeat all of it, the shop, the gas, the winter, narrows to the horror of a stranger's hand gripping the cloth of your coat, inches from a seam under your arm, where a small hard chain lies sewn, and you twist, wild, animal, nothing to do with the till. Get the coat back, get the coat back. And then the sound. You will remember the sound longer than the sight. A flat, heavy crack, like a carpet beaten once. Mr. Crane, who was at the safe, who is 54, whom you have never seen move faster than a funeral, is at the counter with the life-preserver in his hand, and he has brought it down, with the exact economy of a man who has done it before, not on the head, but across the reaching forearm. The arm drops dead as a rope. The man folds off the counter backwards into the box, and the whole shop stands still. the gas hissing, the regulator ticking, Walter frozen over the till with sixpences fanned in his hand like cards, 20 years on its hooks, half a second to come off them. Nobody shouts. That's the thing you couldn't have invented. Nobody in the shop makes a sound, and the man on the floor of the pledge box makes the worst sound in the world, which is a grown man starting to cry with his face against a plank wall. Not at the pain, you understand somehow, or not mostly. He sits in the coffin width of the box, cradling his arm, shaking with cold and shame in a shop where cold and shame are the stock in trade, and through the crying he says to the wall, "I've 3 of them at home. I've 3 of them." Mr. Crane stands looking down over the counter for a long moment. The life preserver goes back on its hooks. Then he does the strangest thing you ever see him do, in all your years in that shop. He picks up the man's watch, which has lain on the counter through all of it. He reads the case, opens it, reads the works, closes it. He takes a ticket and writes it out. Watch silver, 15 shillings, which is over any price that watch would fetch on the best day it ever ran. And he counts 15 shillings onto the counter and pushes coin and ticket through the box together. "You'll want the kitchen fire before you go," he says. "The boy will show you. Mrs. Crane makes tea at 7. And then, in exactly the voice he says not today, "You'll not come into my shop again, either door." The man goes through the kitchen. Mrs. Crane, who misses nothing and asks less, feeds him bread and dripping and tea and doses the arm with liniment out of the dresser, and he's gone by 7:30 out the yard door that doesn't open on the market with his 15 shillings into the orange fog. You never see him again. In April, a woman you don't know redeems the watch, paying with coppers out of a jam jar, and by the way she holds it you know whose it is, and you wrap it careful, and that's all you'll ever learn of that story's other end. Walter breaks the silence at 8, softly, to the till. 15 shillings. He'd have got £4 penal servitude for the drawer. And Mr. Crane, from the daybook, without turning, he'd have got nothing. The drawer never has above £2 in it before noon. Men rob the till, they imagine, and the day goes on, Monday-shaped, as if nothing at all. But that night something has come loose in the house, some door left off its usual latch, because after supper Mr. Crane does what he has never done. He takes a candle lamp and says, "Thomas, stock-taking, top floor," though stock-taking isn't due till February, and Walter looks up and, this you notice, doesn't move to come. The top floor at night is a cold that means it. Your breath fogs the candlelight. The locked presses stand along the walls like upright coffins, and the watches inside them tick, dozens going at once, all wound weakly by your own hand. That being one more strange rule of Crane's, a watch in pawn keeps time as if it were on its owner's chain, because it will go home some day, and it will go home right. Little sounds everywhere in the dark, tick against tick, like rain on the far side of a wall. Mr. Crane doesn't open the presses. He walks to the corner shelf and holds the lamp up to the sewn canvas parcel with the faded ticket and stands. "You've never asked me," he says. "Peck asked me inside a month. The boy before you asked. You didn't." "I was told not to, sir." "You were told not to ask me. There's boys would have asked the parcel." He almost smiles. It goes before it lands. And then, in facts, in order, the way he told the history of the counter at Christmas, he tells you. In the year 1827, there was a waterman off Broadwall called John Crane, who was drowned at Blackfriars in the November of that year, when a coal barge came down on the ebb in fog, leaving a wife, Maria, and one son 12 years old. In the December, Maria Crane came to this same shop kept then by an old man called Elphick, and pledged the 2 things she owned that would raise money: her wedding ring and a shawl with a silver clasp that had been her mother's. 7 shillings the 2. The 7 shillings went on rent and bread, the way 7 shillings does. And every Saturday through that winter a 12-year-old boy came to this counter with what coppers he could get holding horses and running errands, and paid the interest, a penny, 3 halfpence, to keep his mother's pledge alive. Halfpence at a time, at this counter, at that box, the near one, the first box by the window. She died the next September, Mr. Crane says in the voice you'd read a Hallmark in. The pledge had 3 months left to run. I hadn't the 7 shillings nor the start of it. By law, come December, the ring was Elphick's to sell over the counter, and the shawl was for the auction rooms. The lamp is very steady in his hand. He never sent them. He broke the rule of his own trade, the one rule that pays. He wrapped the 2 of them in canvas, sewed it himself. He'd been a sailmaker's son. I stood and watched him sew it. And he wrote out a fresh ticket, and where the ticket says the term of the loan, he wrote, "When the boy's able." And he took me on to sweep the shop at 2 shillings a week, found me the bed you sleep in this minute, and worked me 16 years, and sold me the business by degrees when his eyes went, and he's 20 years dead. A train crosses the arches, streets away, a long roll under the floor, and all the watches tick through it. I've been able, Thomas, since about the year 1851. I could redeem that parcel out of the silver in my left waistcoat pocket. You stand in the cold with your fog and his mingling in the lamplight, and you ask the only question there is, "Why don't you, sir?" Because the day it's redeemed, it's property, he says. A ring and a shawl in a drawer. As long as it stands in pawn, it's a promise, and the shop has to keep it. This shop has kept it under 4 kings and a queen. He brings the lamp down. In the swing of the light, the faded ticket flares once, and you can almost read the stain that was ink, and then it's dark again. People think the trade is about money. The trade is about keeping, boy. Any fool with capital can lend. We keep. He turns for the ladder. Mind the last press is locked, and bring the lamp. And that is the night you stop working for Mr. Crane and start working for the shop. There's difference. You can write it on a ticket, but it will hold you the rest of the way through this story and further into rooms this story never reaches. The frost breaks at the end of January like a debt paid off. The standpipes run, the scaffolds fill, the bedding goes home from the 2nd floor bundle by bundle, and the old soldier's medal, which came back up the spout in the 2nd week of the new year exactly as the ticket book foretold, sits in the top floor press again. Alma and Inkerman asleep in tissue, waiting for the gasworks money to come round. And with the spring of 1870 comes something new across the counter. Politics. It arrives, as most things arrive at Crane's in print. Every week the Pawnbroker's Gazette comes to the shop, the trade's own newspaper, published since 1838. And if it amuses you that pawnbrokers have a newspaper, consider that there are near 4,000 licensed shops in the kingdom, and every one of them lives or dies by the small print of an act 70 years old. This spring the Gazette is full of one thing only: the Select Committee. A committee of the House of Commons is sitting this very session, taking evidence on the pawnbroking laws, brokers up from the provinces to testify, police witnesses, parsons, reformers, and the whole trade is holding its breath over what Parliament means to do with it. Some in the trade want the interest rates raised. A halfpenny on the half-crown, they argue. was set when George III was king and hasn't kept a shop's gas lit since. The reformers want the part-month rule gone. That little rule you worked out on a spoiled duplicate, the 5 days that count as 30. There's talk of days of grace before a pledge forfeits. Talk of licenses made easier, harder, dearer, cheaper. Men who have never stood at a counter in their lives are drawing up the future of Mrs. Toomey's Monday mornings in a panelled room across the river, and the trade sends deputations, and the Gazette prints the evidence by the yard, and Mr. Crane reads every word of it twice with his tea going cold. Will it pass, sir, you ask? The new law? Not this year. Committees report. Then the House finds a war or a scandal to attend to. Then in a year or two somebody remembers, and there's a bill. He folds the paper to the columns of evidence. But it'll come, and most of it should. Hear me on this, Thomas, because it's the last rule I'll teach you and the one the trade forgets. Any law that makes them hate us less is cheap at the price. We live by being the thing people can bear to use. The day they can't bear us, they'll have the shop shut inside a parliament. He taps the paper. Rates I can argue, shame I can't. Remember it when the trade's yours. When the trade's yours. He says it the way he'd say when the fog lifts, a plain fact about weather still out to sea, and goes back to his columns and doesn't see what he's done to the boy across the counter, or does, and finds it none of his business. One raw blue Sunday in March you walk down to the bridge steps with a book to trade, and find Foley recaning his stool, his breath smoking over the work, the river running high and dirty with the thaw. He takes your book, A Life of Nelson with the boards gone, sniffs it, allows it 3p against anything on the basket, and studies you while you choose. Crane's boy still, he says, but bigger about it. They've been feeding you responsibility. He ties off a cane end with a waterman's knot, quick as speech. Mind how you go with that stuff, boy. I've seen responsibility sink more men than gin. Difference is gin's at least warm going down. You take a dictionary with half its spine and pay your 3p book, and he watches you all the way onto the bridge, the way he watches everything on those steps, like the river had lent him out a pair of eyes. In April, Walter goes. He tells you first, before Mr. Crane, which you will always remember, one night in the attic, lying on his back in the dark, offhand as a man remarking on rain. Attenborough's, the great pawnbrokers and jewellers by Fleet Street, want a young assistant for the jewellery counter, and Walter's name went in months ago, and the letters come. Attenborough's, where the loans run in hundreds of pounds, where actresses pawn their diamonds between engagements, and gentlemen pledge their gold cigar cases against a run of cards, where the trade wears a silk hat. 19 years old, out of a Bermondsey apprenticeship, into the top of the profession. Somebody in that house looked at a Lambeth boy's ticket hand and liked it, Walter says to the ceiling. That's the trade, Tom. It's the one door in England that doesn't ask your father's name. It asks, can you tell gold from gilt in bad light with a woman crying at you? That's all it's ever asked. The straw rustles. His voice comes rounder, older, a Walter you haven't met. You'll have the counter after me. You're ready near enough. You'll go wrong twice a week for a month and then you'll be right. It gets easier. A long pause and the trains cross twice. And then, because he's still Walter, the good scissors are behind the twine box. Don't tell Sam nothing important till he's earned it. Sam is Sam Ives, and he arrives on the Monday Walter leaves, and he is 14, out of Bermondsey like Walter before him, with wrists too long for his sleeves and a cowlick with independent opinions, and he stands in the door of the shop with a canvas bag in his fist and his heart in his face, and looking at him is like looking down a well at your own reflection of a year ago. He's terrified of Mr. Crane, of the scales, of the spout, of Mrs. Crane's tea tray, and, for one glorious week, before he learns better, of you. You're late, you tell him, his first morning at 8:03. You hadn't planned to say it. It comes out of the shop through you like the trains come through the arches. Somewhere behind the daybook, Mr. Crane's pen checks for half a stroke and resumes. You teach him the shutters, 1 to 6, catch the weight on your shoulder, pivot, mind the paint, 2p if you splinter it. You teach him the flannel on the side knocker and why it must never bang. You teach him wrapping, and the wet cloth test for silk, and the order of the informations on the spike, and which regulars take chaff and which take silence, and that Mrs. Toomey is 4 shillings, no discussion, 4 and 6 on her life, 4 shillings, and that the sigh is part of the transaction and must be left room for, like the date on a ticket. He gets it wrong. He gets it wrong the exact ways you got it wrong, plus inventions of his own. He sends a bundle up the spout unticketed which loses the shop 20 minutes, and him a lecture from Crane conducted entirely in the pluperfect, and one night in May you hear him in the dark of the attic, in the bed that is now his side of the bed, crying as quietly as he knows how, which is not very, because 14 is 14, and Bermondsey is a long way off when the lamp's out. You lie there listening, 16 going on 17, 1 year and 2 months deep in this trade, and you hear your own voice say into the dark, offhand as rain, "It gets easier." And it does what it did when Walter said it. It doesn't fix the night. It fixes the shape of the nights to come. It puts a floor under the dark. The crying goes off like a tap sinking to a drip, and then there's just the trains, and the two of you pretending to be asleep until you both are. In the last week of May, the old soldier comes in for the 3rd and final time. There's colour in him. The cough has gone up out of the cellar. The gasworks kept him stoking through the cold months at 18 shillings a week, and the winter that half killed him paid him wages, which is the Lambeth way of things, and nobody remarks on it. He counts out the half-crown and the pennies, 5 months this stretch, and when the medal comes down the spout he pins it on, this time right there at the open counter, taking his time over the set of it, square to the coat seam, using the shop's glass-shaded scale lamp for a mirror without asking, which from him is a compliment. "Summer coming," he says, settling his coat. "I'll not trouble you again till it's cold work." He looks round the shop once, brass balls to ticket drawer, like a man reviewing a company that's held its ground. "Like, you keep things proper here," he says, and it is, you understand, the highest sentence in his gift, and he marches out into the May morning with 15 years of the Crimea flashing on his breast, and the whole counter watches him to the corner. June comes in hot and slow. The overcoats begin their summer climb up the spout. The blankets follow. The pledge book almanac reads fair weather, steady work, wages meeting Fridays all along the street. The counter dozes through yellow afternoons. Sam learns to wrap a flat iron in 4 motions. Mr. Crane reads his Gazette. The Select Committee has finished its taking of evidence and gone quiet, exactly as predicted, and the trade breathes out for the summer, and the regulator clock walks its pendulum through the long, bright evenings, and nothing at all is wrong anywhere that anyone in Lambeth can see. The newspapers that summer are thin and comfortable. You read them to Sam over bread and dripping, doing the voices. There's a fuss, briefly, about the throne of Spain. The Spaniards have been shopping for a king, and the name put up in the first week of July is a German prince, some Hohenzollern cousin nobody in the cut has heard of, and the French, the papers say, are furious about it, for reasons of balance and honour and other commodities not traded on Lower Marsh. It reads like every other foreign fuss. A week of telegrams, a climb down, done. Even when the prince's name is withdrawn, and the papers say Paris wants more, wants guarantees, wants it in writing, even then it's 4 columns behind the cricket. France and Prussia, rattling sabres, sir, you say over the paper, one warm Wednesday morning. Will it come to anything? Mr. Crane weighs a ring, reads its hallmark, writes his figure. It'll come to the price of bread, he says. Everything does. You laugh. He doesn't. You remember that 9 days later. But first, one Sunday. You get one more Sunday, the 10th of July, and it is the best day of this whole year, and you don't know it at the time, which is how the best days prefer to travel. It starts with Foley, at the bridge steps, where you've fallen into the habit of Sunday mornings. A book traded 10 minutes of the river, the old man's talk. This morning he's not on the stool. He's standing in a black coat you've never seen, brush shiny at the elbows, and a hat with a nap on it like a mole's back, and he looks you over and comes to some decision that has clearly been a week in the making. You've been over that bridge 50 times, boy, he says, and never once up anything. A man that lives in London and has never looked down at it knows the inside of his own pocket and calls it the world. Come on, I'm rich this week. A gentleman gave me £5 for minding a portmanteau that had nothing in it worth minding. Where he takes you. 2 old man's miles, the bridge, the Strand, gone Sunday quiet. Ludgate Hill under the shadow of St. Paul's, the city streets empty as a theatre by daylight. Is Fish Street Hill, hard by London Bridge. And there, rising out of a huddle of warehouses, is the monument, a single fluted column of white Portland stone, 202 feet of it, with a gilt urn of flames at the top burning gold against the July sky. Built by Wren and his friend Hook, finished in 1677 to remember the Great Fire of 1666, and 202 feet tall for a reason, Foley tells you. Counting out sixpence for the 2 of you at the door, lay the column down flat, due east, and its tip would touch the very spot in Pudding Lane, a baker's shop where the fire began. The whole thing is a giant's measuring stick laid against a catastrophe, stood up on end. Inside, a stone staircase corkscrews up the hollow core, 311 steps. You know because Foley counts them, aloud, in the tone of a man counting an enemy's regrets, resting at every 50 with his hand flat on the cool stone, and the light falling down the shaft from far above, and the steps worn soft-edged by 2 centuries of exactly this. Londoners climbing to look at London. Then the little door at the top, and the caged gallery, iron bars overhead since 1842, because before the cage went up, this ledge became famous for the wrong kind of leaving, and the wind, which exists up here as it never does in the streets, clean and steady off the estuary, and there it is, all of it. You have lived inside this city for 16 months the way a coin lives in a pocket. Now, for the first time, you see the coat. London goes to the horizon in every direction and hazes out before it finishes. Below you, so close you could drop a pebble down its chimneys, the city itself, the banks, the counting houses, Lombard Street where the 3 brass balls were born and grew too grand to remember it. the dome of St. Paul's westward, riding its smoke. The river, and this is what you'll tell Sam about, wide-armed, knocking over the twine box. The river is not water any more from up here. It is shipping. Masts like a winter forest, from London Bridge down to the Haze. Colliers, clippers, steamers, barges, the pool of London packed hull to hull, and beyond it the docks opening off the river like great rooms. St. Catherine's, the London docks, the West India far off, warehouses standing over them in cliffs. Somewhere in those warehouses this morning, tea enough to fill every pot in England for a year, tobacco in bales, sugar in hogsheads, silk, ivory, indigo, wool coming in from the far side of the planet on ships whose captain steered home by stars you'll never see. Every one of those hulls is a promise somebody made and kept. Cargo pledged, insured, advanced against, redeemed. The whole visible world down there running on the same machinery as your counter. Things and trust in and out, the wheel turning, only the sums have more noughts. There's your trade, boy, Foley says. He's got his breath back. His eyes are running from the wind, or the wind will do to say so. The whole town's up the spout to itself and always has been. The bank lends to the merchant to the captain's cargo stands pledge for the lot, and down at the bottom of it all there's a woman in Lambeth borrowing 4 shillings on a suit, so her man can look decent on Sunday. It's all one ladder. You and Rothschild are on the same ladder, and don't let any silk hat tell you different. He's higher up. It's the same ladder. You stand a long time, the two of you, not talking, the wind doing the talking. From up here you can see Lambeth. You work out the bridges, 1, 2, and find Waterloo, and walk your eye up the road to the grey-brown smudge of roofs that does, contain the marsh, the cut, the shop, the attic, your bed, Sam blacking boots in the yard. The whole of your world from up here. A smudge the size of your thumbnail, a cog's eye view of the clock, and you one tooth on one cog, and for a moment the size of it hollows you out like a bell. But here's the thing about a bell. Hollow is what rings. You're in it. That's what comes to you, 200 feet over Fish Street Hill, with your hands on iron bars warm from the sun. Not looking at a picture of it. In it. One thumbnail smudge of that horizon knows your name and your hand and your footsteps on its stairs, has a bed with your shape in it, a counter worn pale where your wrists rest, a ticket book full of your own fair copper plate that will be evidence in law when you're dead, barely a cog, but turning, but here. Now you've seen it, Foley says, starting down, one hand on the wall. You can go back to being too busy to see it like the rest of us. 311. Count them, or they'll cheat you. The week that follows is ordinary on Monday, ordinary on Tuesday, ordinary on Wednesday. Small rain, a christening gown redeemed. Deaf Charlie passes the window once, mild as ever, in a new hat, and does not come in. On Thursday, the papers say the German prince's name is withdrawn, and the fuss should be over, and somehow the columns have moved from page 4 to page 1, because Paris, instead of putting up its sword, is asking for guarantees for the future, and the telegrams have begun to run through the nights. And on Friday, the 15th of July, you go out at 1 o'clock to fetch Mr. Crane's cough drops and a ball of twine, and you don't come back for near an hour because the world has changed shape while your back was turned, and you stand in it, in the street, with the twine in your hand, watching. It's the newsboys you notice first. They come down Waterloo Road at a dead run, 3 of them, bundles under their arms, and newsboys never run downhill with a full bundle. The bundle runs them, everyone knows that. And they're shouting over each other so the words shred. And the only word that survives the shredding over and over, is war. Outside the news vendors at the corner of the cut, a crowd knots up out of nothing, the way crowds do in Lambeth. 10 people, 30, 60, packed round a fresh pasted placard, and you're at the edge of it. You stay at the edge of it. Walter's training holds even now. Both hands on your parcel, mind the crowd's hands, and over the shoulders you read the placard in heavy black capitals. War declared certain, France and Prussia. Great excitement in Paris. And below, smaller. Panic on the Bourse. Funds falling. A man in a printer's apron reads the sheet aloud for the crowd, slow and formal like a lesson in church. The French Emperor is to fight the King of Prussia. The armies are moving to the frontiers. It is expected the declaration will be delivered in form within days. Nobody in the crowd says anything for a moment, and then everybody says everything at once, and you stand at the edge with your twine, sorting the voices. It'll be over by the harvest. It'll be the ruin of trade. It's nothing to England. We're not in it. My sister's boy is in the merchant service. Is that in it or not? Wheat, says one voice, flat. A baker's man with flour to his elbows. Wait and see what this does to wheat. And nobody listens to him, and he is the only one of them all who has it right. That's how war arrives in Lambeth. Not with trumpets, with a wet placard, read aloud by a printer, at a corner that smells of whelks, a war 200 miles away, between two countries England has no quarrel with, that will not land one soldier on this island, and a baker's man muttering about wheat. You run your errand and go back and tell the counter. Mr. Crane hears you out. Placard, crowd, funds falling, the baker's man, and he stands quite still for a moment with his pen up, the way he stands when a hallmark is not where a hallmark should be. Then he says, to the shop in general, in his flattest voice, Sam, go up and tell Mrs. Crane we'll want the lamps trimmed for late working Monday. Thomas, when you close tonight, bring the ticket stock down from the shelf, both books. He looks at the door, at the warm ordinary street beyond it. They'll sit on it over Sunday, he says. Sunday's a lid. Monday it boils. On Tuesday, the 19th of July, a French clerk in Berlin delivers a paper to the Prussian government, and France and Prussia are formally at war. The news is in every London paper by Wednesday morning, and the boiling has already begun, and it does not stop for a month. Understand what a war 200 miles away does to a street like the Cut, because it is not what you'd guess. And you watch every stage of it from behind a mahogany counter, which is the best placed periscope in England. First, in the city, panic. Real panic. The kind the papers print in italics. The funds fall as if a floor had given way. On the stock exchange, men sell anything foreign at any price. Shares in French railways, in banks with continental names, are flung away like coats off a drowning man. Money itself goes frightened. Everyone wants gold in the hand and no paper promises, and within the week the Bank of England puts up its rate, and inside a fortnight puts it up again, and money that was cheap in June is dear by August. You get all this a day late and second hand from the Gazette, from the papers, from a clerk who redeems his watch on the Thursday, sweating, talking too much, a young man in the city office who has watched older men turn grey at their desks. On the Wednesday, sent to King Street with a box, you see the city with your own eyes from the edge of it, and the queerest thing is that it looks like the Cut on a Saturday. Crowds at the placards outside the newspaper offices in Fleet Street, packed shoulder to shoulder into the roadway so the omnibuses must walk their horses, every face turned up to the same black capitals, and runners shoving through with telegrams, and at Ledbury's the sale room half lit, and the round man himself capping his inkwell with the face of a sexton. Sales postponed, he tells you. Nobody will bid on plate or watches till silver finds its feet. Who knows what metal is worth in a war? Tell Crane, nothing moves till the autumn. The tide, it turns out, can stop. And then, in Lambeth, the boiling reaches your counter, and it comes in 2 waves, and they teach you more about money in 3 weeks than the whole year before. The first wave is fear with cash in its hand. From the Wednesday the shop fills, not with a weekly wheel, but with faces you've never booked. Small tradesmen, lodging-house keepers, a publican's wife, the anxious top layer of the poor, and they are not pledging, they're redeeming everything out. Watches, rings, plate, the good chest of tools, people paying down months of interest to get their property home while their money is still money, because nobody knows what a war does, only that their grandmothers knew wars, and their grandmother's rule was, when the drums start, hold your goods and hide your gold. A sovereign in the fist beats a promise in a drawer. In one day you send more parcels down the spout than in any week at Christmas, and the shelves upstairs go gap-toothed, and the float in the safe runs so low that Mr. Crane walks to the bank in Blackfriars Road twice in one day, which has never happened in Sam's time or yours. The second wave, close behind it, is fear with nothing in its hand, because the cut's wages start to flinch. Coal jumps first. The colliers' freights go up with the war risk, and coal is Lambeth's summer economy and small. Gasworks, engine rooms, laundry coppers, then bread. The baker's man had it right. Wheat on the corn exchanges leaps within days of the declaration. France and Prussia are 2 of the great wheat-handling nations of the continent, and the trade routes of half Europe's grain go dim overnight, and the quartern loaf follows. A farthing, then another farthing, and a farthing on the loaf is nothing to a clerk. But it is the whole of the week's arithmetic for a riverside family of 6. And some of the finer trades stop dead while the panic runs. The West End holds its breath, orders pause, and the pause travels down through the sewing rooms and past the wharves to Lambeth, where it becomes short weeks and stood-off men. So the second wave breaks on your counter, and it is Monday morning multiplied by 5, the wheel spinning fast and wobbling. Pledges from families you've never booked before, the proud ones, the ones with the rigid backs who stand in the boxes gripping their bundles as if the counter might bite. And you hear yourself, box after box, saying the small level things Mrs. Crane's kitchen taught you without your noticing. Takes no time at all, this end of it. Back for it whenever you like. It doesn't move. And Mrs. Toomey, on the worst Wednesday, at the open counter as always, but with none of her weather in her, puts down not the oilcloth bundle, but her closed left fist, and opens it, and it's the wedding ring. Michael's on half-time, the rent is the rent, and the loaf is up twice in a fortnight. You know your business by now. You gauge it, weigh it, book it, GOLDRING, in your fair hand, a line you've written 500 times, and you lend her 7 shillings on it, which is a shilling over Mr. Crane's own scale, and he initials the ticket without a flicker, and she winds the brass one onto her finger right there at the counter, and dares the whole shop with one look to remark on it, and the whole shop minds its work. Everything the year has taught you happens again that fortnight at Speed, like a life going past a drowning man. A woman loses her ticket in the crush of the Monday queue and comes back white. No ticket, no pledge, all the law she's ever known. and you get to be the one who tells her the strange rule that saves her. A lost ticket isn't a lost pledge. She must go before the magistrate at the police court and make her declaration on oath, a form and a small fee, and the pledge is hers again against all comers. And you write out the particulars for her to carry, and she takes the paper as if you'd handed her the crown jewels. The flannel on the side door knocker wears through to the iron in 10 days. 10 years of muffled knocking finished off in 10 days of it, and bangs like a musket one Thursday dawn, and the whole house jumps, and Mrs. Crane stitches a new strip on by breakfast, double thickness, waist not. And deaf Charlie, of course, comes to the boil with everything else. Panic weeks are harvest weeks for Charlie's trade. Houses stand empty while families queue, goods move in crowds, and a rushed counter books first and looks second. On the last Friday of July, in the thick of the worst crush of the month, a boy you've never seen, 15, clean-faced, borrowed-looking, comes to the middle box with a gold hunter watch worth £20 and a story worth nothing, and while Sam reaches for the ticket book, you put your hand flat on it, because the informations on the spike have been in your fingers every morning of this trade, and a gold hunter, engine turned, number 40113, has been on them since Tuesday. You look at the boy's clean face, and past his shoulder, through the window, at a mild hat across the street, and you hear your own voice say, level as pewter, not today. And because the law is the law, Mr. Crane keeps the boy talking on the step while Sam fetches the constable from the Waterloo Road corner, and the boy, being 15 and terrified, talks in his turn, at length, at the station. And this time there is a name in it, and an address off the gasworks, and on the following Tuesday 2 detective officers call on deaf Charlie at home, where he is keeping, in a tea chest, a quantity of property that no deafness on earth can explain away. It is the smallest of all the month's news. It doesn't make even the local paper's 4th page. Europe has eaten the columns. But it goes down the cut by supper time, end to end, faster than the war ever moved, and at the Feathers that night you're told a toast was drunk by half the room to nobody, mild as milk. Absent friends, eh? Age? With the hand cupped at the ear. You are 17 years and 1 week old. You booked 109 pledges today with your own hand. The counter did for the rest of you what rails do for a train. And the strangest thing of that whole strange month, the war itself never comes. No Frenchman, no Prussian ever sets foot in the cut. What comes is arithmetic. Freight, wheat, coal, rate, moving invisibly through the air like weather off an ocean nobody here will ever see, and turning up in Lambeth as a farthing on the loaf and a tremble in the queue, and a brass ring on a laundress's finger. Your whole year in one lesson, written across Europe in fire and read out in Lambeth in halfpence. Everything is one ladder. When the top of it shakes, it is the bottom that bruises. Now you know what a counter's for, Mr. Crane says. The night the 1st of August goes into the daybook, the highest month's figure in the shop's history, and he enters it in the same grey hand as any Tuesday. Any fool can keep shop in fair weather. Now get your supper. And then, the way fevers do, it breaks. Not on any day you could name. There is no placard for the end of a panic. But somewhere in the 2nd week of August, the queue at the side door is a queue again, and not a crush. And the flannel on the knocker gets to rest between knocks, and the shop breathes. The armies that all Europe waited on have met far away, in places with names like Worth and Spicheren, that the newsboys mangle a new way each evening, and the fighting is terrible, the papers say, terrible beyond any modern thing. but it is also for England elsewhere. The funds find a floor and sit on it. The bank's rate, run up like a flag in the panic, starts easing down again as the city's nerve returns. Coal steadies, and the loaf comes down a farthing because the harvest at home is coming in, and it is a good one. That's the piece of luck nobody in the cut ever quite believes, that golden August, the weather. While the continent burns its rickyards, England gets a kind harvest month, and the wheat comes off the southern counties heavy and dry, and the granaries answer for the sea lanes, and the price of bread, which is the price of everything, which is the price of peace in Fraser Street, settles like a boat finding its mooring. Mr. Crane's almanac, the pledge book, records the mending of the world a fortnight before the newspapers admit to it. The tools start going home first, then the watches, then the Sunday clothes stretch their wheel back to the old rhythm, Monday in, Saturday out, as regular as tide. Mrs. Toomey's ring goes home on the 9th of August. 16 days pledged, part of a month being a month. 7 shillings and 2 halfpenny, counted out of the knotted handkerchief in silver and copper, warm from her hand as ever, and Michael back on full time at the wharves. For the war, having emptied Lambeth's pockets in July, is filling some of them by August, coal and forage and tinned stores moving through the pool, for markets nobody discusses at the counter. She winds the brass ring off and the gold one on right where she stands, at the open counter, before witnesses, which you understand by now is the point. The taking off wanted no audience. The putting on could use one. She pushes the brass ring across the mahogany to you. "Mind that for me," she says deadpan, "against next time." "We don't lend on brass, Mrs. Toomey." "You'd be surprised what you lend on, Thomas," she says, and sweeps out with her week's mutton to buy, leaving the brass ring on the counter, and it lives in the ticket drawer to this day, in the corner with the string, and every soul behind that counter knows exactly whose it is, and nobody calls it what it is, which is a joke, and a flag planted, and a promise that she'll be back. The wheel admitting, in brass, that it means to keep turning. Sam takes his first solo Monday counter on the 15th of August, and books 60 pledges with only one wrong sum in the shop's favour, which he confesses unprompted, scarlet to the ears, and is made to carry the halfpenny back to a bemused charwoman at her own doorstep and comes home taller. The scales stop frightening him. Mrs. Toomey starts calling him Samuel in thirds, which is her knighthood. In September a letter comes from Walter, from Attenborough's, on paper so good it feels wet. 6 lines, no verbs wasted. He has been put on the jewellery counter proper. Fleet Street is Bermondsey with the prices moved 2 noughts left. The crying is the same further up the ladder. Send word how the Marsh does. You read it to Sam over bread and dripping, doing the voice, and Sam, who never met Walter, laughs anyway. And that is how shops remember people. Even the war, grinding on beyond the channel, becomes kind of weather noise. The papers in the first days of September are black with a thing that happened at a town called Sedan. The French army surrounded, and the Emperor of the French himself, a prisoner in Prussian hands, and his empire finished, and a republic declared in Paris between a Saturday and a Sunday. A year ago the enormity of it would have swallowed you whole. Now you read it at the counter between customers, and note with a pawnbroker's eye the one line in the column that will reach Lambeth. The war does not end. It moves toward Paris, and sieges take all winter, and winters move markets. You catch yourself thinking it. Freight, wheat, coal, and look up, and Mr. Crane is watching you over the daybook with the expression of a man whose handwriting has turned up in someone else's ledger. "You'll do," is all he says. One Sunday at the end of September, a year, near enough, since a boy in a fog carried 6 shutters and heard a flannel knocker for the first time, you walk down to the bridge steps in the last warm light of the year. Foley's on his stool, the book basket at his knee, the river running gold and quiet, the tide at slack, that held breath between ebb and flood when the whole Thames stands still, and even the barges seem to think. You sit on the step below him, and for a long while neither of you spends a word. "Year is it about now?" Foley says at last. Not a question. He keeps every calendar that matters on these steps. "Thought so. You've stopped walking like a parcel somebody might snatch." The river turns imperceptibly. The moored lighters swing an inch on their chains, all together like a thought passing through a crowd. "That's the flood begun," he says. 6 hours up, 6 hours down. It's been doing that since before London, and it'll be doing it after. Everything on this river borrows and gives back, boy. The sea lends the tide lends the trade lends you and me our dinners, and it all goes home again by morning. You're in a lending world. You just found a counter with a roof on it." On Michaelmas Day, the 29th of September, Mr. Crane closes the year's books. It is a rite you now rank with Christmas. The day-books ruled off, the stock-book carried down, the licence renewed for another year, £7.10 to the excise, the dearest single piece of paper in the house, and the whole trade's arithmetic totted and squared and locked away. And when it is done, and Sam is sent up to Mrs. Crane on an errand invented for the purpose, Mr. Crane sets a small parcel on the counter between you, wrapped in the shop's own paper, tied in the shop's own string. "Your year's out," he says. "Second year carries wages, 6 shillings a week and your keep, and the counter keys on the days I'm at the sales. It's in the book. And then, when you don't move, well, open it." Inside the paper is a silver watch. A working man's watch, plain-cased sound, its engine turning worn soft by some other man's thumb. Bought clean at Ledbury's autumn sale, some far shop's forfeit, out of the tide fair and square. It is ticking. He has wound and set it before wrapping because a watch goes home right. That is the rule of the house. "A watch wants a chain," Mr. Crane says in his flattest hallmark reading voice, looking not at your face but, precisely deliberately, at the left side of your coat below the shoulder, where a small hard weight has lain sewn in the lining through every day of this story. "I'd say you're carrying one already. Left seam. Your mother's stitching is better than yours. Hers I might not have marked." The gas hisses. The regulator ticks. There is nothing in his face at all and everything. "A man that can wait a year and a half for the other half of a thing," he says, "will do in this trade. Get it out of there before you wear it through, and wear it like a Christian." That night in the attic, by a candle end, you unpick your mother's stitches with the good scissors from behind the twine box. The chain comes out bright as the day she hid it. Silver keeps in the dark better than almost anything. You know that now professionally, and you thread it through the buttonhole and pocket the watch, and the weight of it sits against you where the secret used to, and it is a strange trade. Weight for weight. The secret was heavier. Sam watches the whole operation from his side of the bed with his mouth open, and asks no questions. 5 months of shop training holding his tongue for him. And you tell him nothing important, exactly as instructed. He's earned nearly, not yet. You do not yet know, as you sit on the bed's edge winding a dead man's watch by candlelight, in the attic over a shop full of promises. that the strange rules themselves have only 2 years left to run, that the committee's dusty report will become a bill after all, and the bill an act in 1872, and the halfpenny arithmetic you learned on a spoiled duplicate will be swept away, the part-month rule softened, days of grace granted, the whole trade rehinged, and that you will stand at this counter under new rules and reckon them mostly just, exactly as a grey man once taught you to. That's ahead. Sedan smoke is still drifting. Paris has not yet felt the siege. The cut is only just paid off. It's July. Tonight is only tonight. A candle, a chain, a watch, with another man's wear on it, and all your own time in front of it. The next morning you take the shutters down, 1 to 6, catch the weight, pivot, mind the paint, with Sam carrying alternates because that is the new order of things, and the fog is coming up off the river the colour of dishwater, and the gas is lit over the door, and above your head the 3 brass balls hang in the mist, and somebody will have to go up the ladder with a rotten stone before winter, and someone is already knocking at the side door. Soft, patient, flannel on iron. A year and the wheel has come all the way round, and you are not the boy who first heard that knocking, and it is the same knocking, and both of those things are true at once, and between them you have come to understand is where a life happens. Sam, you say, stacking number 6. The door. On quiet evenings now, in the last of the year's warmth, when the shop is closed and the books are ruled and Sam is off blacking his boots for no reason a boot could justify, you sometimes sit a while in the back room by the window that gives on the yard and let the day settle in you the way dust settles in a shut shop, slow and even and finally still. The Marsh goes to bed in stages, and you know every one of them now. The market first, the last barrows wheeling home in the dusk, the naphtha flares dying one by one, the street boys sweeping the fish scale glitter into the gutters for whatever the gutters pay. Then the shops, shutter by shutter, each with its own note. The ironmonger booms, the chemist rattles, Cranes shrieks at the third panel and always has, and you have privately decided always will. Then the public houses much later, a spill of fiddle and lamplight at the corners, going out last like the big slow embers at the back of a grate. And under it all night the trains crossing into Waterloo, long iron thunder near, far near, until the sound stops being sound and becomes a kind of pulse the whole parish keeps time by, without knowing it keeps anything. You think, on these evenings, about the people this year has carried past your counter, the way the river carries its traffic past Foley steps. Mrs. Toomey, whose brass ring sleeps in the ticket drawer against a next time that will surely come, because next times come. That is what the wheel is for. The old soldier stoking his winter gas fires somewhere east of here with 15 years of the Crimea pinned inside his coat. The man with 3 of them at home, whoever he was, wherever the 15 shillings took him. Walter, under the good gaslight of Fleet Street, telling gold from gilt with a woman crying at him. Further up the same ladder, Dick, whose surname you never learned, in whatever room a man sits in when no pledge book in London will hold his name. Deaf Charlie, hearing everything now at his leisure, at the Queen's pleasure. The curate's wife, the clerk who talked too much, the woman with the jam jar of coppers, 1,100 names in your own hand in the books below you, each one a bad Monday or a mended Saturday, each one a whole life you saw 4 minutes of, through a slot the width of a coffin, in a bad light, and below you, as you sit, the shop holds all of it. That's the thing you come back to on the quiet evenings. The thing you tried to tell Sam and botched, and will try again when he's earned it. The dark shop under your feet, floor upon floor, is not a warehouse of things. It is a warehouse of promises, stacked in paper, breathing camphor. Every parcel up those racks says the same words in the dark. Somebody meant to come back. For a suit, for a ring, for a concertina, for a medal, for a christening gown. On a Saturday, by Christmas, when the gasworks takes men on, when the boy is able. Some of the promises will be kept on time. Some will be kept late. Some will never be kept at all, and go to Ledbury's in a corded box, and even then, strangest rule of a strange trade, the law walks behind them for 3 more years, holding the poor man's surplus in a drawer, waiting for a knock, a whole city pawned to its own future, and the future mostly paying out. You keep the books of it. You keep the promises other people can't keep at home. We keep. It is, you have decided on the whole, and against every sneer the word will gather in the centuries you'll never see. Good work. The candle's burning down. Go up now. Sam's ahead of you, already breathing slow on his side of the bed, 1 boot blacked, 1 abandoned, 14 and spent, up the ladder, coat on the nail, an empty seam under the left arm, a watch and chain across the front ticking against you, keeping your time now, nobody's secret. Boots below the bed. The straw takes your shape the way it has taken 100 boys' shapes and will, and you're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a trade in your hands and wages in the book and a name no man can buy for a shilling. That's more than the boy at London Bridge Station had, with his canvas bag and his 3 shillings and his sewn-up secret. That's more than most in this parish, in this year of the war and the harvest. That's enough. Tomorrow there will be shutters, 1 to 6, and the weight will lean on your shoulder in the old places. Tomorrow there will be a queue at the flannel knocker, and tickets in your fair hand, and halfpence and string. Tomorrow the wheel will need turning, and the watches winding, and Sam watching, learning the strange rules 1 halfpenny at a time, the same as you, the same as Walter, the same as a boy who swept this shop for old Elphick in the year 1828, and grew grey keeping its promises, the same as this whole year past, this, the same as all the years stretching out ahead, turning, Monday into Saturday, autumn into spring. But that's tomorrow. Tonight the shop is locked, and the books are square, and the fog is coming up off the river to stand quiet guard in the streets, and every parcel on every shelf below you is exactly where its ticket says it is. Nothing is owed that isn't written down. Nothing is written down that isn't kept. The whole house, from the safe to the attic, is one long ledger that balances, and you're one of the lines in it, and the line is good. Listen. The last train crosses the arches, long and low, going west, carrying its lit windows past the chimney tops like a rosary drawn through fingers. The regulator ticks on in the dark shop, keeping the time of a shipping office that no one now remembers. A watchman's tread, a dog, streets off, the knocker silent in its new flannel. Small sounds going out one by one like the market flares. Let them go. Let the day go with them. Let sleep take you the way the tide takes the moored boats at Foley's steps. Not carrying you anywhere, just lifting, just easing the weight off the chains. Let the cue fade, and the halfpence, and the string. Let the numbers slow and uncouple and drift. Let your hands, that wrapped and weighed and wrote all day, lie open on the blanket and hold nothing at all. Centuries will pass. The marsh you know will change past any finding. The barrows will go, and the naphtha flares, and the fogs themselves. The trains will run without smoke, and then almost without sound. The shop will change hands and names and trades, and the attic where two boys are sleeping will look out over a street no waterman would know. The strange rules will be rewritten, act by act, until hardly a halfpenny of them stands. But the 3 brass balls will still hang, here and there, over London doorways, polished by other boys on other ladders, and people will still walk under them in every century carrying the same bundle. Money will still run out on Mondays, pride will still need a side door. Somebody will still say, quietly, across some counter, "I'll be back for it," and mean it, and be believed. Some things don't change. The promise doesn't change. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Thomas Gale in his attic over the shop on Lower Marsh, a century and a half ago, with a watch ticking on the nail and the fog standing guard and the whole house of promises kept beneath him. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest. The books are square. Take it and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.